I'm Angela Cripps, the MD of the Recruiting Gym. We've had 3 in a row where there's been a lot of winning. I'm so glad to say that the men have turned up for this session. We've got one, I nearly said old flame then. Sorry, Rod. I was putting you in a totally different box at that point. Someone that's been with us quite a few times before, Rod McMillan. We've got Michael, who's making his second appearance, and Dan, who's new. So I think we're up to 105 coaches on Ask the Coach now that have supported our industry, given their knowledge, helped and shared what they know. We've got 6 pre-asked questions. So if you don't know how this works, I'm going to ask the coaches to introduce themselves in a moment. Whilst they're doing that, if you're on Crowdcast, if you'd like to come and vote on the questions, just in case you want your question to be at the top of the list, we'll look at that. If not, we'll do them in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, let's get started. So, Rod, let's come to you first of all. If you could tell everyone who you are.
Yeah, I'm Rod McMillan. I'm the marketing manager for Monster.co.uk. As I said, I've been here 5 or 6 times, but this is my first time with full fibre broadband, so I'm quite excited to be in HD, and I'm not going to drop off as I normally do halfway through an answer.
You've just passed that on to Dan, obviously. Literally, the perfect timing. Dan drops off. I'm sure he'll be back. There we go. So
I didn't touch anything.
You heard that. Rod was doing that all the time before, but he's now got full broadband. Whereabouts are you calling from, Rob?
I'm in rural Scotland, so it was a dodgy mobile signal before, but they finally rolled out fibre. So I'm about 40 miles south of Glasgow, about 60 miles north of Carlisle, so in the borders.
Just shows you, doesn't it? Glasgow, huge international town, and 40 miles away, you couldn't get broadband, but it's there now. We finally got there in 2023. That's fantastic. Thank you, Rod. Michael, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, hi. So looking for the mute button. So hi, I'm Michael Moonesinghe. It's my second time on Ask the Coach. Thanks for having me back. So I'm a little bit further away from you. I'm actually now living in Sri Lanka. Someone's got to live on a beautiful tropical island, and it's me. So I'm a bit of an old timer in the recruitment business. Started in 1989, so just 34 years, and now run an international research business based out of here in Sri Lanka.
Fantastic. We started the same year. Didn't realise that. Wonderful. And Dan, our newbie.
Hi guys, it's a pleasure to be here. Amongst these 2 giants, I'll try not to be too intimidated. I'm the CEO for Screencruit. It's a video pitch and introduction platform, and I'm based in Malaga, in Spain.
This is so international. I love it. Brilliant. Well, you've got everyone's LinkedIn links in the chat here. So if you do want to connect with them further, or if you want to follow up on a question, gather more information, please feel free to do that. Okay, so I'm going to be coming to Rod first. So let's focus you. Let's get that question up on the screen. How can I tell if my remote workers are actually working?
Yeah, I think this is a big question that's threw quite a few people into panic, let's say 2-3 years ago, especially if they're the sort of manager that's used to, having a very open plan office, being able to hear and see what everyone's doing. But we do need to address it. There's been a transformation, traditional offices into digital workspaces for the whole. So there are challenges for leadership there in assessing productivity. I saw a great TikTok comment on it the other day where someone had asked this question, and the person said, well, is the work getting done? Which is basically the bottom line. Is it an outcome-focused management over just presenteeism? So a lot of the principles are the same as for measuring productivity in person. People need to know what they need to do and have a clear expectation of when that's being done. So you need specific measurable goals that are aligned with the team competencies, and people need to have communicated the timelines to help remote workers focus to that. Routine communication is a must. So that can be emails, calls, IMs. I think it's important to emphasize these contacts are just part of routine management and checking in, and not as a monitoring tool. Nobody likes to feel that they've got somebody sitting on their shoulder watching them. That's really going to break down trust, and it's a two-way street with trust. You need to be able, if you can't trust your workers to be getting the work done, then there's probably underlying issues there that just deep surveillance aren't going to be able to solve. Some big no-nos on surveillance technology. Let's say we've seen some horror stories of managers demanding that all their team have their webcams on streaming all the time, so they can like literally watch them. That's that's it might seem like a great way to reproduce being in the office, but it's going to really harm trust, really harm how people are feeling at work. There are other technologies that you can use. Look at project management software to build up a team dashboard for tasks. So there can be specific ones like LeanKit, Basecamp, Microsoft Project, but even a shared Excel file might do it, where you're not having to micromanage everyone, but you can go somewhere and see at a glance, this person needs some help, this person is ahead of their tasks, these things are getting done, and it keeps everyone accountable as well. There's one source of truth. You want to be vigilant for indicators like a drop in work quality, so have the same measures in there. And obviously you need to find ways remotely to address that constructively. Culture, encouraging an environment that still values breaks. You want people to be doing the work, but you want people to be taking breaks and finishing on time as well. Otherwise they're going to burn out, and that's going to hurt your productivity in the long run. So work on trust from the very outset of establish trust and clear expectations. Keep social channels alive with phone calls, IM, email. Managers should show a bit of discretion as well. Should recognize there's flexibility with remote work. Someone might be more happy to work an additional hour at the end of the day to meet a project deadline. That might mean you give them some slack if they step away for half an hour earlier in the day. Try not to focus too much on over surveillance with things like tracking mouse movements and having webcams on. That's really going to hurt productivity in the long run. And I've got some notes here as well. You need to address the challenges of remote work, such as isolation, and find if there's an underlying problem. If you're noticing more than one person's productivity is dropping off at the same time, there's going to be an underlying problem there. You need to understand what the problem is, so you're going to be able to fix it. And from a recruiter's point of view, if you do something that is, like I keep going back to that one where they wanted the webcam switched on, that's going to really harm your employer brand. If something gets out like that, nobody's going to want to work for you or work for the roles. So you need to do it wisely. But the bottom line is the work's getting done? Maybe not so much focus on how many hours was somebody on the phone, how many hours were they moving their mouse on the computer. That's presenteeism. You need to just work on the outcomes.
I think that's really critical, isn't it? Those objectives. Michael, you'd like to add something?
Yeah, I agree. And I think I would have been a big fan of remote working long before the pandemic. And everyone was saying, no, our workforce can't be trusted, which is quite sad because you pay a wage every month. But no, they won't work. And we had all of those reasons. And then COVID came along and it thrust remote working in our faces. And there was nothing you could do but work there. We used to have 42 researchers all in one very expensive office in the centre of Colombo. Since the pandemic, actually, people have said, you know what, we kind of like working from home and we like this hybrid model where we can come into the office when we want to. So we completely went even the next stage and said, well, okay, let's have flexible working. In our business, you can't hide. I can see with a Google Sheet, like Rod says, the work's getting done. But I tell you what, you work when you want to work. I'm not going to tell you when to start and stop. Some people like working at night. They're more productive. Some say, look, I'm going to take Friday off and spend the time with the family. I'll work Saturday or Sunday. Okay, I don't mind. So really embracing that flexible workforce, we found we actually get tremendously more output and production from our team by letting them make the decisions of when they work as well as where they work. So it's certainly working for us.
Yeah, I mean, if you can do that in a business, it just makes sense, doesn't it? And then you've actually got a longer period of time that your customers are covered as well, if people are available during those times. So
we have some people who want to work through the night. So we said, fine, work through the night. And we use the time difference with the UK to our advantage, 5.5 hours. So there are still people around when the UK is awake. So it works for us tremendously.
Great. I mean, I'm so glad we've got these opportunities now. I think without the pandemic, we probably wouldn't be where we are. But of course, that productivity is critical, and you're right. It's about the objectives and achieving things. And if they're doing that, how they're doing it, well, that's down to them, isn't it? And that's where that trust comes in, that they're going to be doing that. Brilliant. Michael, I'm going to keep you on. So for question 2, in a tough market like now, we're seeing some shoots of it all getting positive again, which would be lovely. Would you recommend being proactive to search for the best candidates for clients, even when we're working on a contingency fee basis? What's your view on that?
Yeah, I've worked on both sides. My first 8 years was as a contingent recruiter, and in no way would I ever be disrespectful. It's how you learn the business and how you earn money. But sometimes I find that if you've got the right candidate, or good candidate, you actually have an awful lot more options open to you. And I think having that relationship, I know we're going to talk about client relationships later on, that if you can go that extra mile for your client, and you know they can't get a retainer signed off. And actually, I'm not a big fan of retainers, even when I was in executive search. You basically give the client a stick to beat you with. You know, they part with some money. Now, it's your problem that you can find the candidate. So
we've got Adam Clark here. He does our selling retainers course. I'm sure he'll have something to say about that.
Yeah. You know, most of my work has been in retained search, but you can do search without being retained. I think that's the point I'd like to make. And you can add value to a client relationship to say, you know what, Mr. Client, will you give me a window here? I'm going to invest some time and maybe some money to actually go out there. And often clients will pay for research time. They won't pay you a third of the fee, but they might say, look, I'll find £1,000, £2,000 in the budget somewhere. Let's do some research. I'm going to go the extra mile for you, Mr. Client. Give me a window of 1 week, 2 weeks. Let me come back to you with some candidates that no one else have. They've not put the CVs on the merry-go-round that everyone's sending the same CVs. I've got something unique for you. And I find it draws the relationship closer. You go away from being across the desk as a supplier to sitting alongside them with your arm metaphorically on the shoulder, saying, okay, let's see how we can solve your problem. I'm going to invest some time and effort with you to try and come up with a solution by being proactive in the market for you. But if I'm going to do that, I need some commitment from you. And it separates you away from the pack of the 8 or 10 other contingent recruiters they might be using, because you're doing something extra for them. And what I find is, even if you don't get the placement, you might get some really good candidates you can then spec out elsewhere. But you also, and you can often create a vacancy no one knows about because you're proactive in the market, no one else is. But it does draw you closer to a more of a consultative relationship, which is how I've always sold, as a consultative partner to you. I'm an advisor to you. I'm helping you. I'm a consultant on recruitment issues, as opposed to someone who sells CVs. And I say I'm not being disrespectful on people who sell CVs, because that's how I learned the trade. But that would be my advice, is it does definitely helps you.
Yeah, let me get Alan's comment here. I've heard people say, I don't want to sell a retainer because I'll have to deliver on it then. Well, as a contingency recruiter, you were expected to deliver on it. You weren't expected to take roles on that you couldn't fill. So that was all a key part of it. But you're spot on there. Going out and finding great candidates and doing research on your market is something that every recruiter should be doing, building those talent pools with wonderful people. Because even if they're not available now, they'll have a great network as well, and they'll know people. So it's always about building for the future. So yeah, I'd totally agree with that. And happy to move that on. Just a quick break there to say thank you to Job Adder for sponsoring our Ask the Coach. They also sponsor our Meet the Expert sessions once a month as well. Just in case people wonder my Job Adder was up in the corner there, they're our sponsors. Thank you. Wonderful. I'm going to bring on our newbie. So Dan, if you want to unmute yourself, and we're going to tackle question 3. So let's go into that one. What does a video CV do that the traditional CV doesn't do in the modern job market? Everyone's talking about video. They have been for quite a few years, but it's back again with a vengeance at the moment.
It is. I'm going to ask everybody, attendees and all yourselves, to do a little Google search in a minute for those who are computer free. Yeah, it's a good point that you to mention Job Adder, because Job Adder on their About page is the message that I like the most, focusing on the humanity in recruitment, which I think automation and AI stands to take away if we're not being careful. So actions speak louder than words. My business is all about show, don't tell. And it's all about showing what a CV cannot. So if you have a look at my I told you so moment I made a year ago, Hilton, the Hilton Group. We all know we've at least seen one of their hotels maybe once by now. If not, then keep peddling. But if you want to have a Google search about Hilton video CVs, you'll find about 7 or 8 different results that were publicized this week saying, we're done with CVs, we're done with cover letters. Gen Z are around the corner, we're now going to embrace video CVs. I told everybody this was going to happen. Now, they've gone a step further than what I am proposing. I'm not proposing that we replace the traditional CV. Recruiters would miss them, and we'd all kind of like go, no, because we still need to see documentation, just like we do with a compliance form. However, as an extension of a CV, in a link, when the selection process gets a little bit more critical, a little bit more obscure, to find out, right, out of these 25 remaining from these 100 we've whittled it down from, you look me in the eye and tell me you're not going to click on what I can prepare. If you want to hop onto my website, you'll have a look at what we can actually do. It's not just one of those automation templates. You work with us, and we make sure everything sings your personal brand. So just like COVID catalyzed the whole notion of remote work, and companies had a chance to say, well, we're going to embrace this, or we're going to make sure we keep it guarded and keep people to office space. Now, just as you guys have been talking about, Rod and Michael, and yourself, Angela, I'm also a big advocate for remote working. However, just as automation as AI has come onto the scene, we're now at a T-junction with that now, saying, well, do we want things to be cheaper and quicker? Or do you want to spend the extra few seconds with something like a personal branding that a video CV can offer, like Hilton Group have discovered, not only welcoming the next generation of people who are going to be employed, but also to showcase what you can do. So you don't just have to buy what you read on a piece of paper anymore. We are now in every quadrant, whether we're a graduate or boomers or whatever, we watch more than we read now. And you're not going to watch a good movie without a good trailer, are you?
Yeah, good point.
So, Rod, you had a point about Jurassic Park in one of the discussions on the recruiting gym I saw. I thought, well, why don't we talk about things like War Games, Terminator, Matrix, Ex Machina, and the latest Mission Impossible movie, all making an example of where AI is now. It's becoming an increasing topic. People watch all this kind of stuff. Now, where my little grievance is with where we are right now is, if anybody has a quick hop over to my LinkedIn page, you'll see that I've posted a video of who watches Britain's Got Talent.
Not anymore, probably not for the last 5 years.
There was something posted by a top voice recruiter. I follow quite a few, and the name that escapes me, but the content is a lady who comes on as Switzerland's Got Talent, gets on stage, crowded auditorium, 4 judges, you know how it goes, and she starts painting this picture. About 30 seconds in, got the first judge, oh, I'm bored, and this girl is like, is she screwing something up, or is it part of the act? And then this judge is quickly influencing the other 3 around her. Oh, let's just get them off, get to the next one. Now, that's it. Now let's frame that on recruitment, and we go 30, 40 seconds later, the show lets her finish. She turns the painting upside down, blows it. Out pops this magnificent portrait, go and see it for yourselves, of what her capability is. The auditorium goes wild. The 4 judges are like, oh my God. But her shot is already blown. She's already got 4 no's. Yeah.
So she's missed her chance there. So again, like that initial bit, I just want to put a comment. Unfortunately, our Charlotte, who normally monitors LinkedIn Live over there, so if you see me looking down, it's because I'm picking up the LinkedIn Live comments as well. We got John Boats on there saying, when I was a recruiter last year, I did not accumulate CVs. I interviewed people for actual jobs where the employer had a contract with me to find the talent they were looking for, and that is the recruiter's job. But we have to do it 15 jobs at a time.
Absolutely.
Whilst you're doing it, and therefore, and like you say, the documentation, unless there's something else that's going to replace it, it still needs to be there for due diligence.
Absolutely.
Person. I love the videos. Rod, did you want to say something?
Yeah, so just to see a comment there in the chat about, doesn't a video CV give potential employer areas on which to discriminate, such race, age, gender, whatever? Yes, it does, and it's possibly just moving that to if they're going to discriminate on a video CV, they would discriminate in a live interview.
Exactly what I've been saying, Rod, to everybody who give me that question. So yeah,
I think. Video is coming. It's inevitable, but it's been inevitable for a few years. I think more companies are putting videos out there, so it's natural for candidates to put videos there. Where I do see challenges, and I'm glad you said it's not replacing the documentation yet, because eventually we're going to have AI that can search a transcript of a video, and you can search your video CVs for that person or that person who did that. At the minute, applicant tracking systems aren't going to cope with video CVs without the actual profile, without the actual, right, I can search for this candidate that I saw 6 months ago in my system that's now going to be right for this job. So I think that's a challenge, but I think it will be solved with AI and with transcript mapping and things like that. But I don't think we're quite there yet. But yeah.
Michael, did you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to basically agree with what Alan's mentioned in the chat, that there is a danger that the video CV can encourage people to make decisions and brain's gone blank. What's the word I'm looking for? Discrimination. That's the word. Sorry.
Blind hiring.
Yeah. And I know, with having a Sri Lankan name, Moonesinghe, that a lot of people will make assumptions, and when they get me on the phone, it's like, oh, you speak very good English. I said, yeah, I spent 50 years in England and born and bred there. So that people do make assumptions, whether we like it or not. I'm a great fan of the video interview. I think that's great, and particularly if you're looking for a client-facing person, you're looking for someone with personality, and you're looking for someone who can sell themselves. If it's a sales role, or is this person going to fit in with the team? Absolutely agree. I think it's going to save it. So I'm kind of on the fence both sides, Dad. I can see the advantage of it, and I like your analogy of the trailer in the film. But I wouldn't necessarily want people to make those decisions straight away. Oh, hold on, she's wearing a burqa. No, we don't want any of those there. In a very quick story, when I was in charge of Mansion House Technical, we had this guy. I mean, this is going back into the days when you couldn't do it. You couldn't do it now, where this person said, don't send me any of those people with brown skin.
Oh,
the person he was speaking to had a very, very broad Sheffield accent, but also was from the Caribbean. And as she would say, black is the ace of spades. So she said, just one moment, let me just pass you through to my manager. Told me what had happened. I said, well, let's have some fun here. So, and I basically said, look, not only do we adhere to the letter of the law, it's the spirit of the law. Yeah. We don't want to recruit for you at all. We don't want your business. And by the way, we will also be reporting you to, the authorities. And just for the record, the lady you just spoke to, actually, her family comes from the Caribbean, but she's lived all her life in the, come out of the Stone Age, mate.
Yeah.
but it is there. It's ever present.
Yeah. So actually, yeah, you've got both sides of the coin there. I think if people are going to discriminate, they're going to discriminate anyway, aren't they? Whether it's at the first stage, the second, third, at that point. And maybe because of that, you can pick it up easier, because it would be a lot more obvious, wouldn't it?
Saves time on both sides, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And let's report those people. And that was always a conversation as a recruiter. What do I say when they say they only want women or they only want men, whatever? Yeah, you have that difficult conversation and you tell them exactly where you stand. And if they go, oh, didn't realise, no, we want women because we've got no women and we really do want women. Well, okay, still going to be the best person for the job. And hopefully for you, that'll be a woman, but I'm still going to be sending men. Right, let's move on, because this is a discussion we could have a long time, maybe for our new podcast that I'm ruminating about. Right, question 4 then. So Rod, I'm coming to you. This is, what do I need to know about the new flexible working rights? And actually, I was like, yep, I need to know this as well.
Yeah, so I've got notes to keep myself right here as well.
Yeah,
So
good. Yeah, we'll get the we have legal guy on, Declan, every now and again from Doyle Clayton. He's not been on for a little while, so you're right. We need him on because there's always legal stuff to talk about.
So it's the Employment Relations Flexible Working Act 2023.
Yeah.
What we need to know is it received royal assent in summer this year, but it's not come into force yet. And it amends a statutory flexible working regime in the UK. It's expected to come into force next year. We're expecting that to be either April, possibly it might slip to October. They tend to like to roll a lot of these things out on the same dates. So there's 4 key changes for employers. If you're going to reject a flexible working request, you now have a requirement. You have to consult with employees before you do that. That's a new step that wasn't in the previous process. Employees can now make 2 flexible requests in a 12-month period, which is double. It used to be once a year. And you need to respond faster, more reasonably, 2 requests. So if someone makes formally requests flexible working, you need to respond to them within 2 months, which I think is still a reasonable time frame to get your ducks in a row. The biggest change is, and it isn't actually in the legislation yet, it's expected in secondary legislation, which will come whenever it's being implemented, is a day 1 right for flexible working. So previously, people had to be with you for 26 weeks, but now it's a day 1 employment right. So key things to know about the law itself: it doesn't create an automatic right to work flexibly. It just maintains and expands the right to request flexible work. The grounds for refusal are still the same as they were. You can refuse it. I'm going to read these off to make sure I don't miss any. If you can demonstrate a burden of additional costs, if you can demonstrate a detrimental effect on meeting customer demand, if you can show there's an inability to reorganize work among existing staff. I'm going to share a link to these afterwards as well. If there's an impact on quality, performance, or if there's not enough work during the periods the employee proposes to work. So, for example, as you were saying with the flexible work, if somebody wants to work on a Saturday instead of a Friday, that's great for some work. But if it's only a Monday to Friday business with customers, that's going to be a reason to refuse it. Or if you've got planned structural changes coming. So what do you need to do ideally ahead of April for it to come out, is review and adjust any flexible working practices to make sure they comply with the Act. So you're going to want HR and legal looked in on that, I imagine. If you're managing managers, you're going to need manager training to make sure they're consistently handling requests the same way. Which leads into the final point, which is a policy update. You're going to want to look at your contracts, your flexible working policies, and make sure they're aligned in time with the new Act coming out. So I'll share a couple of links in the chat. The CIPD have done a link on it. There's the government page as well. And Munster have got an article on it as well for employers.
Fantastic. I've just put the government page in there, actually, because it's got the Act that you can download as a file from those, but those other 2 as to how it actually relates and what it all means. And thank you, Munster, again, for collating all of that and doing the work for us, because it does make a difference when someone else has gone, okay, how does that work, to pick from there. So from an impact point of view, then, what can you see being the biggest obstacle for people here?
I mean, I think it's a good move. I don't think there's huge changes in that. It's maybe just reinforcing the idea that if it's reasonable, you have to have a very good. It puts the onus on refusal to having a very good reason to refuse it. I think if people can get ahead of this, I mean, some companies are more in favour of flexibility than others, but I think it's the way things are going. I think it's good for productivity as well. The more flexible you can be, the happier the staff you're going to get. I think companies that can get ahead of this and be offering more flexibility now, even before they're sort of forced to by the law, are going to be at a bit of a recruitment advantage because candidates want this. So it's going to be a great part of your employer branding message. If it's already coming by, latest October next year anyway, get ahead of it and get it in place as quickly as you can. It's going to make you more competitive whenever you're hiring.
Well, whenever there was a bit of legislation, it was always a great opportunity to speak to our clients about it. And in your opening gambit, saying to them, the reason I'm calling today is to find out how the Employee Relations (brackets Flexible Working Act of 2023) is going to impact you when it comes in next October. I would say 9 out of 10 of the people that I was speaking to then would go, what? Okay, there's a new one. What do I need to know about now? So if you can get ahead of it, this is where the consultant part of the recruitment consultant comes in, and great opportunity to discuss it. So the hiring managers might not be aware of it. HR, you would hope, if you're talking to them, but not all the time. It depends on the business. Sometimes these things pass you by and you go, well, wait a minute. So being the one that goes to them, and they'll either have an answer or they'll go, thank you very much, and I need to do more work onto this. What do you know about it? So do have an answer when they actually come through. But what a great way of starting your conversation. So October next year will be here before we know it, won't it?
And again, it might be April. It's expected around the middle of next year anyway, sometime. Which
usually means October, yeah. Having seen these before, the date usually moves by a few months at least, but that's brilliant. Thank you. And Dan, I have seen your point there. If we get a chance, we will be coming back to that. Okay, Michael, your next question. Let's focus you. So with the market still a little skittish, and that's probably a good description of them at the moment, actually, what should recruiters be focusing on right now to make an impact for next year?
Yeah, and I would carry on from what you've just been saying about being consultative with clients. I found some of the best conversations I had with clients was not when I was there trying to fill a vacancy or sell them a search. It was a case of, tell me about your business. What's happening next year, next 3 months, 6 months? And unfortunately, we all fall into that salesperson role. We're there to sell people to jobs and jobs to people. But how often do we actually invest the time? And I do think it's an investment. And now Q4 is often a great time to invest when people aren't that busy. Maybe you're taking a bottle of whiskey or sherry to them, but you also say, hey, can we just talk about what your plans are for next year? Is it growth? Is it reduction? Is it merging? There's certain things they won't tell you, obviously, but other times you'll be surprised what a client will tell you if you invest the time to learn about their business. And what I've found that's been so useful, when a month down the road, I interview a candidate just on a speculative basis or in connection with something else. And I'd be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, you know that project you were telling me about? I just interviewed a really super candidate that I think might be worth you seeing. You know, have you got an hour to put aside or half an hour to put aside to meet the person? You're way ahead of the pack. No one knows that vacancy's even been released yet. They've not put the advert out. They've not put the CV out. And if you take the time to invest, and that's what I would be doing when the market's skittish, I'd be getting really close to those clients that actually, you know, are good clients, give you good business, pay the bills on time, take your phone calls, arrange interviews when you ask them to, and those good prospects as well. And let's not forget the prospect clients are also really useful to draw close to them by asking questions about their business. I've had clients say to me, Michael, no one ever bothers to learn about my business. You're all here to sell me your service, third, and this, that's great. But you're taking trouble to learn about my business. And I like that. And I would say that when the markets are skittish, you should be doing it anyway. You know, like you said, Angela, it's that consultant part of being a recruitment consultant. And if we're true to our words and we really want to be consultants on human capital issues, I think it's a massive miss if you don't invest that time to find out, because it does pay back later, tremendously pays back.
Well, I always found it difficult to find the right person to them, not knowing what the challenges were, what the objectives were, what they're actually trying to achieve, because it was usually something in that conversation that would then trigger with a candidate, and they would be like, you know what, I did that in my last company, or we've gone through that in the last 2 years. I can bring a lot of knowledge to them to help support in that, and that's it. That candidate gets the job then, and that wouldn't have been necessarily part of the job description if you just worked on that. It's those, what's the company trying to achieve. We've also got, I'm just trying to get it in the chat, but the link's not working at the moment. We've got 2 webinars this month talking exactly about that, making the most of the end of the year, and a lot of what you've just said there is a key part of that. So I'll get that link in there when the copy and paste will work. Pick up from there. Wonderful. Anything else you'd like to add on that?
No, I think I'm conscious of the time, and No others want to speak. So no, I think that's what I would do. Get in front of your clients, and I would do it face to face if at all possible.
Yeah.
Face to face, ask to see them, and make it clear that you're there to find out about their business and what's the plan for the future. And we all know that candidates become sources, but they can tell you all sorts of information. And even if it's not good news, look, we're not going to be hiring, in the next half year. Well, okay, that's fine. I know about that. But who do you know? Who in your network should I be talking to? And I've switched clients to sources for information and for future leads. So it's amazing what can come out of those meetings. And I would try and do one at least a week, a face-to-face with either a good prospect or a good client, and say, I'm here to find out about your business.
Yeah, no, definitely. Rod?
Yeah, I love that. It's investing in relationships, even when there's not necessarily, business on the table. Those are the people that are going to think of you whenever something does come up. And just talking about things like the flexible working rights, things where you're adding value by giving them advice on something that's not selling to them. It reminds me of, IR35 as well. When that came out, that sparked a lot of really good conversations where you're giving, because it's not always, obviously, especially if someone's running a business as well as trying to deal with all the recruitment. So being that source of knowledge and being a reliable relationship then is going to pay off in the longer term.
Definitely. Right, Dan, let's focus you. Let's get you on screen for the last question. What do we got? We've got 8 minutes. We're doing great. Well done, guys. So our last question then, different ways to raise awareness of myself. So this is a recruitment consultant that's looking for a new job, but I know there's quite a few people out there at the moment that are looking for new jobs. So whether it's part of your candidates or you are part of the recruitment world, then yeah, what can they be doing to raise awareness of themselves?
Okay, right. Well, it's already been said from the company's perspective. It's come up on the recruiting gym sessions quite a lot. How do we attract top talent? And it's kind of like piggybacking what Rod and Michael have already kind of put together. If you extend flexibility, that's kind of like a driver of what you're going to be going, well, what a candidate's going to choose, that company over another. If we're talking from a candidate perspective, you've got the Great Resignation, which hasn't really helped your chances because that talent is coming back on to either reskill to go to different industries or whatever. So reskilling, or if you're looking at presentation, then of course it does come back to video CVs, introductions, and showing what you're made of. So going back to where I crossed paths with you, Angela, in the beginning was at the Recruitment Agency Expo last month. And I was approached by, what do they call themselves, directors or head of whatever it's called at universities, as well as 3 students from Aston and Hull University. And graduates, they had the same problems that has been going on and getting worse for the last 20 years. Even at entry level, they're getting asked, for example, we expect experience in this and fluency in that. They don't have that yet. So how do we demonstrate those skills? Now, if we're going to put those skills on the screen, this doesn't matter what level you are, even at C-suite. I can show anything with what Screen Creating and the creators can do, putting your highlights on there, your fluency in a piece of software. If you're an engineer, it might be AutoCAD. If you're a designer, like from my background, you might want to illustrate your animation works there and evidencing your work and explicitly putting on the wow factor. Because as Michael says, getting in front of the clients, getting in front of the prospects, that is absolutely great. But when you've got a dozen people to attend to at once, that just kind of like makes the job a little bit easier on both sides. Yeah. And also coming back to a little bit of what we said about discriminatory behavior. Well, we live in a time where diversity, equality, and inclusion is like a lot of buzzwords on websites that we see. Well, if you are making them put their money where their mouth is, I hold people accountable to what they put on their websites all the time. So by putting all that stuff and all that effort, energy, and initiative, now just by having that link on your CV, you've already shown the desire to communicate, the desire to show initiative before they've even opened it, because you've got something somebody else doesn't. Now, once they've opened that and they've seen it, they've been dazzled, with a video CV, I would recommend, obviously that's my business and that's what we do over here. If you're going to showcase what you're made of, showing and not telling, well, that proves that you're kind of thinking with the times and you're kind of like ahead of it. And like Michael said, do put in the time to research the companies that you're applying to as well, because nothing frustrates me more than people reaching out to me about software development and going, mate, I've got no desire for this whatsoever. We get these emails all the time.
Yep.
Please put that research in and reflect that. Now that in a cover letter, what was it? We had a comment, Alan was saying it's kind of good to see that people don't want to see cover letters being generated by ChatGPT. Absolutely. Well, we have an expression in the media industry, show don't tell, and actions speak louder than words, and the very famous one, the camera never lies. So there's a lot less you can get away with on the camera than you can on a CV or a cover letter. Just find those ways in 2024 around the corner, coming around, and use it. Innovate video when you can, be more dynamic and a bit more forward thinking with what you're choosing to represent you.
Yeah, so putting yourself out there, showing what you can do rather than telling, always hear from that. I love other people showing what you can do as well. So if you are out of work and you're looking to get yourself out there, then your LinkedIn recommendations, work on those. Go back and talk to colleagues, and if you are in recruitment, then who you've placed, your candidates and your clients in the past, and get them to write something about you that you can then use, and that might be something that you then use in a quote on part of your video, and it just
right, put them on screen too. Absolutely, yeah,
definitely. Rod, you want to add something?
Yeah, just to jump on for a moment about the AI and the videos and the people don't like the ChatGPT CV, so the video is better. I would check out some of the AI tools that are out there. I've seen ones that can, we've all got the filters that can make you a bit thinner, a bit younger, or maybe even give me hair. There's even translation ones I've seen where people can record a video in English and through the AI, it'll translate it into another language and even match their lips to it. So the camera definitely does lie. I would say for rec to rec, people are looking for a recruitment job, they're a bit of an advantage because think about the candidate behaviors that from your experience make a good candidate and make them stand out, and the things that you don't like, and just give yourself a little sense checklist of doing that. But putting yourself out there, I think video, social, writing, check how you Google as well, all the things from the other side of the table, and use that knowledge to guide how you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah, definitely.
Something quickly is it was something that Rod said in the last video as well, because there's obviously UK and US English as well to be aware of. That I thought was a very good point on your last chat, because LinkedIn descriptions, those words, those keyword changes, every single job description, it might be the same job, but it's found with different word searches. That gets a little bit crippling as well. And also with regards to what was it? You just said it, the CV being able to, it's gone out of my head, I'm sorry. But yeah, those keyword searches, there's a little box on LinkedIn, for example, where you've got how many skills out of 10, and they might shrink or increase depending on how those words are spelled. So go and have a look at each job description if you've got the time, and just have a check on your skills and what words you're using in your profile, so it's found.
Makes a huge difference, doesn't it, Michael?
Yeah, just really wanted to jump in. I did 10 years of search for search, which is sort of good for the search industry, and absolutely some of the worst candidates I ever came across in their presentation, their communication, were recruiters. And the expression, physician heal thyself, really, really comes to play. You need to be really clear about how you're presenting yourself, who you're making contact with, are you following up, is it professionally done, and don't just work on the basis, well, I was at Corn Ferry for 3 years, of course they're going to give me a job. And the recruiters that I had to deal with for 10 years were some of the worst candidates ever at presenting themselves. Not all, but a lot of them were some of the worst.
Good at the interview, aren't they? They can talk in the interview and they can put themselves across really well. But you're right. I saw one last week and I was like, you've been a recruiter for 10 years. Your CV is terrible. How did you think this was going to get any further?
You'd think you'd be brilliant at it, wouldn't you? And I include myself in that. My CV was terrible. Thankfully, I don't need one anymore. Totally unimportant. But I include myself. My CV was terrible.
I've only had to write mine once actually, and yeah, I did spend a bit of time on it, and I did get other people's views, because if you give it to another recruiter, they'll critique it, and you'll get that information back. But you're right, we're just not very good for ourselves. John on LinkedIn, recruiters spamming with AI make it difficult to get a conversation with a prospective employer. Yeah, the AI conversation is going to go on and on. We can see the good in it, we can see the bad in it. We just need to make sure that we're on the right side of that. The camera does lie. I've seen Angela first thing in the morning. Yeah, anyone that's on the daily workout with me will know that 10 minutes before the show is when I'm putting my makeup on. So if you want to let's see that, you can. Michael, is that your or is it Michael's boat behind your picture? Actually, I was looking at your picture, Dan. I've got a very similar picture on my Facebook profile, and it was a boat on Cape Verde on the beach. Is it that one? No, it's not that one, but it looks just like that, a photo that I took as well. Brilliant. Okay, amazing. Look at that, 12:30, spot on the dot, gentlemen. That was amazing. Loads of information there. I've learned stuff. I'm going to go and look at that bill again and find more details on there. So if it's video CVs that you're into, then Dan's your man. If it's search and research for your search company, then Michael's there as well. But any advice, I must admit, everything you say, Michael, it's weird. It's like we grew up the same in recruitment. I know we started at the same time, but there's definitely synergy there. And obviously from a job board point of view and all that data. So if you could get those links in there, I can see you've put those in, Rod. You're such a source of information at Monster there that's really helpful for everyone in the industry. So thank you for that, and your company for doing that. Wonderful. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time. Goodness. In December already by that one. So looking forward to that. Let me just double check.
Friday for us, everyone.
No, we're all good. Wonderful. So yeah, LinkedIn's are there, and thank you if you were on LinkedIn as well on the LinkedIn Live. We'll see you back in 2 weeks. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.